One of the common mistakes IFR pilots of smaller airplanes make is to completely disregard the departure procedures of the airport they're departing from. One of the questions I always ask applicants is, what are your takeoff minimums today from Morristown? With emphasis on today. The answer I get in 90% of cases is 0, 0. Zero visibility and ceilings at the surface, citing the takeoff minimums as depicted in FAR 91-175 that only assigns minimums for takeoff to Part FAR 121, 125, 129, or 135 operators. The airline rule of 1 mile for 2 engines or less airplanes and half a mile for more than 2 engine airplanes or helicopters. The student tells me because they operate under 91 rules, they don't have to comply with that and can take off with 0, 0 conditions. Now, accept the fact that taking off with such conditions is probably the stupidest thing you could ever do. There are also other things to keep in mind. One of them being that many airports have specific departure procedures, and those apply to all pilots and not just commercial operators. First of all, some common sense. As mentioned previously, if you really want to be safe, always consider the worst case scenario. Consider the possibility that after takeoff you experience a problem with the airplane and need to head back immediately to the airport. With that in mind, never take off if the conditions are such that shooting an approach back into the takeoff field would put you in a situation out of your comfort zone. A good starting point would be a ceiling of at least 1,000 feet above the decision altitude or minimum descent altitude and 3 miles visibility, and slowly bringing them down with experience. Again, those numbers are something you need to decide for yourself, but they need to be something you are extremely comfortable with. Now for the actual rules. If a departure procedure wasn't established for the airport, you need to comply with it, no matter the rules you operate under. To find out if there is a departure procedure at your airport, all you need to do is check any approach plate to that airport. And if you find a white T in a black triangle anywhere on that plate, it means that that airport has non-standard takeoff minimums. At this point, you would look for the DP section of your approach plates, the departure procedure section. Find your airport and determine what your minimums are based on the runway you will be using. For example, let's say that you will be departing runway 23 in Morristown. I take a look at the ILS for Morristown and notice that T on the approach plate. So following the procedure I described above, I take out the departure procedure section and find out that unless we can climb 394 feet per nautical mile, runway 23 in Morristown requires 400-foot ceilings and 2 miles visibility. So can we climb 394, well, let's say 400 feet per nautical mile? Well, first we need to convert that to feet per minute. To do that, we'll pull out the rate of climb table at the beginning of our approach plates. You can find it in the legends. Here, on the left, we can find the feet per nautical mile, and at the top, our speeds. Assuming our ground speed for the climb is 90 knots, we will be going across from 400 on the left to intersect 90 from the top to find a required climb of 600 feet per minute. By the way, as usual, for safety reasons, always calculate using the worst case scenario. I used 400 feet per nautical mile not to round up closer to 394, but to consider again the worst case scenario, having us climb more feet per nautical mile requiring a greater performance. And 90 knots, even though the ground speed on most small airplanes would probably be closer to 80, especially if we consider the headwind. It's always better to be safe than sorry. If you do not have the table handy, if Vy of your airplane is close to 90 knots, you can always multiply the feet per nautical mile times 1.5. You're doing 1.5 miles per minute at 90 knots. At 120, you'd be doing 2 miles per minute. So if Vy is over 100 on your plane, then multiply that number times 2. Whether our airplane can indeed climb 600 feet per minute or not depends on the atmospheric conditions. In most cases, if Vy is close to 90 knots, your airplane probably can do that. But if the temperature and humidity are high and the pressure is very low, it might not be able to do that. Always check your POH to be sure. Back to our minimums. If the airplane today can climb more than 600 feet per minute, then we can legally take off with those 0-0 conditions. If not, then the airport must be reporting at least 400 feet ceilings and 2 miles visibility for us to legally take off. This was an extract from our up-and-coming IFR Procedures app, which will be available soon from Pilot Training Solutions. Visit passfaexams.com and find out all the latest about this app as well as everything else we offer to help you become a better pilot. Until next time, happy flying and blue skies from Pilot Training Solutions.